And the next stop on the Purdue Redemption Tour is the Final Four.
More in motion, they get it to him. Over in space, goes to speed. A touchdown for Purdue. He's still going.
Welcome everybody to the Wash Boilers podcast. So today, in our first episode, we're going to be going over a quick recap of the season. Then we're going to be looking ahead and also seeing kind of the high points and low points of this past season. And then we're going to end it with a draft of our favorite memories from this season. So yeah, excited to get started, and let's go for it. Yeah, so kind of starting off, we'll go into kind of our first segment, just kind of recapping the season. So obviously it's been a few weeks. Crushing loss in the Elite Eight to Arizona. One where, you go into half up 7, and then, it was disappointing, but compared to some Purdue losses, I feel like they kind of gave it away very early in that second half, and we kind of knew early on what that game was going to turn into and kind of the script that we'd seen before that seemingly we avoided in the first half, but that second half just kind of, unfortunately, went the way it did.
Yeah, it's kind of the first point I feel like I ask when I talk about Purdue people in this game is like, is this closer to a UConn loss where do you feel like there was seriously a gap between us and Arizona, or do you feel like it's just a game where it got out of hand? Because obviously we were up in this game at halftime, but I don't know if it's just the way people talk about the game before we go into it. Everybody had Arizona. I think every single person had Arizona winning, and every time they were a better team than us, even though realistically we shouldn't be looked at like that. And so I'm curious, like, for your perspective, do you feel that this falls into that UConn zone, or is this more of like a Michigan-Iowa State game where it just got away from us? We could have won if we played again. I don't know.
I think it's UConn zone, if I'm being, like, completely...
I think I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at, like, the UConn game, and I rewatched the highlights of that recently because I like to, hurt myself, I guess. But, like, with that game, we had it tied up until, like, maybe the early 30 mark. The Cam Heide putback dunk was, I think we were down 7, maybe, and that was kind of maybe the last time you thought there was a little bit of a chance. But that UConn game, really, I mean, it was competitive for the first maybe 15 minutes. It just happened in this game. It was competitive for the first 20 instead of the first 15. So I think that, we were able to keep it closer just because this Arizona team wasn't as good as that UConn team. But at the end of the day, I think it did kind of just come into a place where they had better athletes and just their team composition. That's who Purdue usually loses to. You look back and yeah.
I feel like it's a good question though. So when you say something like Arizona has better athletes, and I feel like a common complaint you hear with these Purdue teams is we have these amazing players. I mean, we'll go into later how good Braden, TKR, Fletcher were for Purdue, but it seems like we always run up into this impossible ceiling of, we just aren't as athletic as this other team. I don't understand. I guess, where do you think does that come from, the fact that we run 3 guards? Is that like a just personnel issue? I mean, when was Jaden Ivey like the last athletic guy you would say we probably had in terms of just like, because he's an NBA talent? I don't know if that's what we're missing, and maybe I don't know whose fault that is in the program, just who we recruit. But I agree with what you're saying, where I feel like we just always run into that wall. It's that wall of waiting until we hit a UConn, Arizona, or even Michigan to the extent this year. I know we'll get into how we beat them eventually, but if we play them again, I think a lot of people would have thought it would have gone differently.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, you don't want to say, like, it is just, like, the recruiting and we're not taking the right guys. Because, I mean, we do, like you mentioned, we do get Jaden Ivies. I think even, obviously, he didn't play this year, but I think an Antoine West is probably on that level. You know what I mean? Cam Heide's probably on that level. Cam Heide was incredibly athletic. I think the problem with Purdue is that we either have kind of skill guys, and that's where you'd think maybe like a Braden and Fletcher and TKR, where they're really good at the game, which is great. But then on the other hand, if we do have those athletes, we have an Aaron Wheeler, we have a Cam Heide or a Miles Colvin who, yeah, sure, they can jump out of the gym, but they can't dribble, and they can't do anything, and they can't shoot. Cam could shoot, but for the most part, they struggle to kind of put together that point A and point B. And maybe with the Jaden Ivey, that is one of the rare cases where I think, a Purdue player was able to put those together. And, he went top 6 in the NBA draft, for a reason. So I think just consistently, you find someone who, like a Braden Smith, who's not probably his listed height of 6 feet tall,
It's
but
accurate, yeah.
exactly, it's just, unfortunately, you kind of get into a situation where at some point, someone who's 6'4" and going to the NBA is going to be able to beat you, even if you're probably better at the game in general, it's those physical attributes. If you're not as fast, or you can't jump as high, or you can't, if you're not strong enough, in some cases, like, there's just nothing you can do.
I think it's a good point, and I think it's something Purdue fans will just have to probably deal with in the Matt Painter era, which is not an era I will ever complain about. But I feel like that makes an interesting case for when we talk about, to an extent, like the Big Ten tournament, if we want to move on to that. I think, why are we then able to beat some of these teams like Michigan, who clearly was the best team in the country this year, like by far, probably one of the best Big Ten teams of all time? Like, is it just the system Matt Painter runs that can be so frustrating sometimes? Is just able to beat people, or is it like, are we overrating these games where, like, we lose to Arizona even though we're up at half, and we lose to UConn even though we're keeping it close, and we overrate those? We're like, oh, well, we actually just don't have athletes. I don't know. Like, I feel like we're making excuses sometimes.
I probably, honestly, I think, like, Michigan's a good point, because that Michigan team beat Arizona by, nearly 30, or they were at least up 30 in that game. And even when we played them the first time in Mackey, even though they won, we won the second half, and we played better than them for probably 3/4 of that game. They just had that, I think it was a 14-0, the stats called, like, the kill shot, when you go on a 10-0 run, and that's what Michigan was, probably the best team, one of the best teams of all time at doing that this season, especially, highest rated team ever on KenPom, I'm pretty sure. So that's unfortunately kind of like where you lose that game. And then you look at the second game, there might be other factors people would try to point to. That's Michigan's third game in 3 days. Now, obviously, that's also our, like, fourth game in 4 days. Yeah. So that excuse is also there, but you could say they're not shooting the ball well. It's, some kind of weird situation there. So neutral court, maybe. But, I mean, the tournament is a neutral court, too. So I don't know. I think it probably is an excuse, but yeah.
For Purdue culture, I feel like sometimes we play the little brother a little too much. I think we need to start acting like we are as good as these other schools in terms of athletes. I mean, I wouldn't hate to get some more guys who maybe could make an impact like that immediately, but I mean, we can't compete with any of these schools. There's no reason we can't win, or we couldn't have won last year if we just, played like that same game 10 more times. I guess it makes me wonder if that's why you don't see us go in the portal right now, or you don't see us do some things a lot of these other schools are doing, because we know we can win with the formula that we have right now. And so I always think about that when we talk about the athletic thing. It just gets on my nerves sometimes, because I'm just like, what? Like, we're so good. Obviously, we are good every year. I mean, it's just a topic about that.
So, kind of looking back on this season, obviously came into the year with a lot of big expectations, ranked number 1 preseason. Briefly lost it early, but then got it right back with a big win in Alabama. You look at the end of it, you win the Big Ten tournament, but you don't win the Big Ten regular season like you were projected to. Just kind of curious, in your mind, how do you compare the two? Obviously, you raise a banner, but a lot of people don't think it's the same, so just kind of curious what you think about that.
I think it's all about, ask me in the moment, and I'm going to say a Big Ten tournament title is like the best thing to ever happen, because especially for a team like Purdue this year, which had such big expectations to win that regular season championship and be the best team in the Big Ten, to win the tournament then is like, okay, we were that good. We could have won this, and it helped after obviously tumultuous season. But I think looking back, I think you'll probably agree with me on this. You probably want to win the season. You probably just want to be the best team all season. I mean, think about all the games you win from that. Think about all, like, how you're talked about. You're probably a top 4 seed at that point. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a question that I'm curious if you know the answer to. Who won the Big Ten tournament Edie's senior year when we went to the national championship game?
I think I know this one only because I feel like I talked about. Is it Iowa, right?
No,
Or is it? It's not. Oh my god, I have no idea. Then I'm lost.
it was Illinois.
See,
And,
that's exactly. They got
Yeah,
30 pieces.
but like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, they
exactly,
lost in
no.
the only thing that's remembered from that season is that they gave up a 30-0 run to UConn, in the
Exactly,
tournament.
first thing I
So,
said. Yep.
exactly. So you have, like, number one, the tournament is going to trump all regular season accomplishments, and I count the conference tournaments as regular season. I know they're technically postseason, but counting them as like pre-tournament, where if you lose, you still have a shot, if you're a good team, to go to the actual NCAA tournament. I think that, I do probably put a little bit more of stock into like a Big Ten tournament champion than maybe most people, just because, when you look at like even like football and you're comparing it to that, junior year, we went to the Purdue-Michigan Big Ten championship game in Lucas Oil. That wasn't decided in the regular season, and you can say whatever you want about the, divisions or whatnot, but if Purdue would have won that game, regardless of the fact that, they had a worse Big Ten record than Michigan, they would have been the Big Ten champions. And when they played Michigan that Sunday in Chicago this past year, that's the Big Ten championship game. So I do think, and, Painter said it in his post-game conference from that game, the Big Ten regular season champions were Michigan. Michigan were the Big Ten champions this year. We were the Big Ten tournament champions, which is great. And, in 5 years when I talk about this season, I'm not going to say the word tournament. But, in the here and now, like, that's what you kind of got to live with. But, yeah, I think, like...
So we're talking so much about Michigan right now. I feel like it's an important point to make because it should be Purdue. We were projected to be that good. We were projected to be the regular season championship and the tournament winner and go however. I think we had the best odds at one point to the national championship. Why? I can talk about this too. Why do you think that did not happen? I mean, why was it? The new players didn't come in, be as good as we thought they would be. Was there like disappointments? Is there anything that you think was like an overarching thing that affected the team?
I mean, to me, it seems like everything obviously didn't fall apart because this is a team that made the Elite Eight, but it seems like this team lost its confidence after Iowa State came into Mackey and just kind of dragged him up and down the court. Yeah. It seemed at that point where, a lot of the stuff about, maybe Purdue doesn't have these super tall athletic guys. And, even though that's probably an overborne, talking point, I think that kind of became like into the zeitgeist at that point, and Purdue doesn't lose at home and Purdue doesn't lose these non-conference games, and then you're the number one team and all of a sudden like, oh, we just got absolutely destroyed. Are we even on this class of team? And then you look, you start the Big Ten regular season pretty well. You get out to 17-1, and then you lose to UCLA, and then you lose to Illinois, and then the probably lowest point of the season, you go down to Bloomington and you lose to IU right after they win the national championship in football. Probably, is that the lowest point in Purdue sports ever? Probably.
It's by far in our lifetime. So the worst.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the lowest I think you could argue for any type of sports fan. I mean, that would be an interesting thing in itself, is how much lower can you be than losing in your opponent team's arena after they win a national championship. But
and to a bad team, too.
Yes, they're not good. Like, it's something that you can talk about for hours and hours about why didn't it work. I mean, I don't know. Clough, I think, was everything we could have asked for. Maybe he turned on a little late, I think, because, in the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament, he was amazing. Probably our second best player besides Braden Smith, if not our best at some points. And so it's weird that he didn't work out. Liam Murphy, a very weird one where I think a lot of people were hyped on him going into the season as like a three-point specialist and then just never saw him. I don't know if that was... Maybe that should tell us this portal isn't as important as we think it should be sometimes. But, Meyer was good too. He's not a portal edition, but he was, he was our first or second guy.
He felt like a portal edition.
He did.
Anytime you bring over one of those like professional overseas players, like it feels like you're bringing in a portal edition. And I think he was hyped up to be more of an immediate impact than he ended up being. Not that he was bad, like you mentioned, but I consider him as like a part of that, kind of portal class a little bit.
I think it just highlights like some stuff at the portal. Like I just think a lot of Purdue fans are questioning right now why we aren't going in the portal, and I can't have a good answer for that besides whatever we say the answer is going to be as a team, but it makes you think like, okay, maybe we need to rely on our players to see where we're going to be and then get holes or figure out what the holes are next year. Because I mean, we are such a new team next year. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but we're losing so much of our team. I feel like the portal can be something people put too much of their hope in, especially if you're an IU or another type of school like that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where Purdue ended up this year in the Elite Eight, in, a draw in a region that was probably a good draw up until that Arizona game. Let's say you flip 3 Big Ten games this year that Purdue should have won. They should have won the UCLA game. Keaton Wagler's going to be hopefully a Chicago Bull. He's going to be, a top 5 pick in the draft, top 7, At some point, he comes into Mackey, he scores 40. I'm not going to take that away from him. Purdue could have won that game, but that's incredible. Hats off to him. They should have won the IU game. There was no excuse to lose on senior night to Wisconsin. And, there's no excuse to go into Ohio State and lose either. So I think that if you look at those games, and let's say you don't flip all 4, but you flip 3 of them, Purdue's record in the conference becomes 16-4. They're second in the Big Ten. If they still win the Big Ten tournament, even if they don't, do they not get that 4th 1 seed instead of Florida, who won a weak SEC and really only kind of slid in the back door to get a 1 seed because UConn fell apart at the end of the year? And then also kind of with that, even if you don't get that 1 seed, maybe in that region you end up as the 2 seed, as the highest 2 seed, instead of Houston, who it was. And then obviously, you have Illinois, who ended up being a Final Four team in the Sweet 16. But if you beat them and everything else, and you have an Iowa team who you beat by 30 in their building, to go to the Final Four, that's a good draw. But unfortunately, kind of the story of this year is, you could tell maybe the seniors, they're great, but this is their 4th regular season. Maybe it became a little bit of a slog after they, lost those early and those 3 in a row Big Ten games, and really, especially after they lost to Michigan, it kind of just became like, we're not going to win the regular season. Like Painter said, we have 4 Big Ten losses at that point. That team's not losing 4 games. As it turns out, not only did Michigan not lose 4 Big Ten games, they didn't lose 4 games in this season. So I think that, unfortunately, Purdue played itself into a hole where they did the best they could in the Big Ten tournament to get a better seed, but really the season, unfortunately, their fate was probably sealed, barring an upset of Arizona in the Elite Eight or whichever 1 seed they ran into, when you just kind of let it slip away. And unfortunately, the regular season, it is important, and I think that we lost a little bit of sight of that once the team kind of got down on their luck.
I think that's just something you can talk about for so long with what went wrong, what went right. But I think we'll get to, in terms of the lowest point of the season, I think we covered it pretty well with that. Either, in my opinion, the IU loss, like you say, or the Iowa State loss too, because we just get blown out in Mackey, and it's not a feeling you ever want to experience as a Purdue fan. And so I want to save our highest points of the season for later, for when we do a draft of our favorite memories, just to keep that in there. But I think we should move on, and we can take a break here, but we'll move on into reflecting on the season a little bit more than we have, maybe just reflecting on the players that we're losing. But we'll get right into that.
Awesome.
So we obviously just reflected on the season as a whole. I kind of want to reflect on the 3 main core. Obviously, the best class Purdue's probably had in a while: Braden, Fletcher, and TKR. Is there any specific things you want to talk about for Braden specifically?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Braden Smith, and obviously the first thing, he's the greatest point guard in Purdue history, bar none. He's one of the greatest point guards.
Basketball.
No, literally, yeah. I mean, him and the names that he's mentioned alongside are incredible. Just kind of going through a few of his accomplishments, which I feel especially when Purdue was struggling, we just kind of forgot about some of the amazing things that were going on. So obviously the main one everyone knows, all-time NCAA assist leader. He got that against Queens in the first round of the tournament. Incredible. I mean, when you start, especially as a 3-star coming in like he was, normally you're not going to start every single game as the beginning of your freshman year all the way up to your senior year. So to be able to do that, to be able to stay healthy, I don't think he missed a game in his career.
It's insane.
Yeah, he had the one scare against Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
In the
two this
tournament.
year randomly. He had those one
Yeah.
games where he, twists his leg, and then you're like, all right, season's over.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So, I mean, to be able to, just be a good enough player to do that and to stay healthy is incredible. And especially he proved these last 2 years, oh, you're throwing it inside to Edie. That's super easy to get a bunch of assists. No. Let's look at the players
the best part
that
about
Hurley
it,
was
man.
playing with. I'm sure it was super hard to get, a bunch of assists with, all those Duke players.
Yeah. It's probably the best part
weak
of it is to
argument.
buck all the talk about him just being Edie merchant or something, and to have someone like TKR who's also a guy who developed at Purdue, and them together to do that that makes it so much better. I mean, that's what makes Purdue basketball so good to watch. But I think in talking about TKR, honestly, because we can talk about him too. I mean, the development he had at Purdue is exactly why we want people to come to Purdue and stay there the whole time. That's why we don't always go to the portal, and we don't want to be one of those teams, because you can see a guy like TKR start and get all the way to where he was in his senior year. I'm sure you have more stats, I guess, to say about him, but it's just an insanely good story to see.
Yeah, I mean, with TKR, especially coming in and he redshirted, he was set runner-up to Caleb First, who didn't redshirt, in Indiana Mr. Basketball. Guys like that don't come into college and redshirt. They just don't. Now, there were a few other things with him where he came in, he had an injury, so that kind of contributed to it. But, I mean, you look at it now, if he was a senior last year and he was off the team, realistically, he probably doesn't start until his junior year, which would have been Edie's senior year, when he actually started in our timeline. So I think the biggest thing about TKR is, like you mentioned, Purdue's system and why players come to Purdue and why they succeed at Purdue is because he bought in. If he was pushing to play right away, maybe he enters the portal after a while because he's not starting for his first 2 years, and we are having an entirely different discussion right now, and maybe we have different players, and reality is we're probably not as successful, without TKR.
Yeah.
So amazing that he was able to stay on, and kind of building on him as well. You look at it last year, and he's averaging, nearly, if not at 20 points per game. Huge rebounder, playing center, probably shouldn't have been, but, just because of injuries and everything like that, taking a new role, doing a great job. And then this year, without complaint, you hear a lot about stuff coming out of the locker room and other programs, especially, the guy from Wisconsin who just went to Duke, and his first quote is, I'm 6'4", I'm a point guard, I want to be more on ball, but they weren't letting me do that there.
Yeah.
TKR, coming into this year, we bring in Oscar Clough, who's clearly going to take away a few post touches from him. Obviously some of the other new guys on the team this year that are going to take away opportunities for him to score. And obviously he had issues early on sometimes about losing his temper on the court. But that's because he wanted to win. It wasn't because he was like, I want the ball and I'm not getting the ball and Braden passed me it more. No, it was just because, he's a competitor.
Who cares?
Yeah, no, literally. And for him to be able to sacrifice maybe some of the individual awards this year, maybe an opportunity to be first team All Big Ten or to win the Malone Award, which he was still a finalist for, that's a pretty selfless player. And it's something that you take it for granted. And then if you have a guy in the future, who's maybe not as willing to just kind of go with the program and just kind of buy into the team, you find yourself thinking, man, I wish this guy was like TKR.
Dude, you want to talk about taking for granted, and this is something that I'm so guilty of myself, is Fletcher Loyer. I think without a doubt, to bring him up now, if we could name an award after him besides a leadership one, because obviously that was a huge thing for him today, it would be taken for granted award. Because I know next year we're going to be, I wish I could have a 3 right now, or have anything happening in this game for a random offense, and Fletcher Loyer going to be there to bail us out for his 5th year. It's a guy that you watch sometimes, you're like, I don't know, man. And then 10 minutes later, he has 15 points because he just hit 4 threes in 10 minutes. And it's hard to say because, he's a guy you always want on your team. He's a guy that is such a Purdue player in and out that it sucks that he wasn't. I almost want to say like, and maybe this is just a me thing, but wasn't as appreciated as he could have been sometimes. And I feel like that's going to be something we're going to be looking back at a lot.
No, 100%. I mean, one of the stats about Fletcher this year is he led the Big Ten in 3-point percentage.
Ridiculous.
And you watch it and you're like, Fletcher misses every damn three.
Yeah.
And the only thing that he's supposed to do is shoot threes, and he can't even hit it. Now, he did have that slump, in the middle of the year. And against Illinois, Painter benched him. I don't know for what reason, whether it was just play, whether, Painter saw something that we can't notice, on defense or something like that. Whatever it was, he did get benched. But again, kind of to point to that TKR point, Fletcher was still the guy in post-game interviews. He's the first one talking. After that Oregon game where it was an ugly win that we only win because of him, he's the first guy there saying, we need to get better, we need to do XYZ. Whenever Purdue dribbles the ball out, who's the guy who dribbles it out? And obviously he's a good free throw shooter, so that probably goes into it. But Fletcher Loyer, like you mentioned, he's the leader of this team.
Yes.
And the fact that we're losing him, someone is going to need to step up. And one thing I'll say about Fletcher, and this is probably my favorite kind of tidbit from him, and what really in my mind I was like, oh, I didn't consider him at like a tier of my favorite players or whatnot until he said this. But one of the reasons they went out and won the Big Ten tournament, he said, was for the players like Jakari Harris or CJ Cox or Omar Meyer, who weren't there for the runs with, or really the run with Zach Edey to the Final Four in the national championship game, who hadn't experienced that same success. So for them and those seniors, and to be led by Fletcher to go out there and not only, win for themselves and try to save their legacy a little bit after a shaky end of the season, but to do it for the younger guys, to get them all the way to the Elite Eight, so that in the future, when Purdue is trying to make runs, we have guys who have that experience and have been in there before. It's just the reason why when Purdue finally breaks through and wins a national championship, it will mean so much not only to the players on that team, but it'll mean so much to the Fletcher Loyers and the Braden Smiths and the Zach Edeys and the Carson Edwards and everybody else of the world who came first and built on the program and passed it down. And I think Fletcher's just a shining example of kind of what a championship team and culture is built on, even if they don't necessarily get to experience it as a player for themselves. So Fletcher, I couldn't agree more. He's a special player, and we're going to miss him next year.
That quote immediately makes me, and this has been predicted for a while, that he's going to be an amazing coach. I can already tell that he'll be a great coach for whatever D3 school he starts at, and then he'll be, I'm sure, a D1 school coaching some power school in 10 years or something. But yeah, I mean, you can say so much about those guys. It's great to see. I mean, the thing that I want to do to move on from that is talk about next year and where we go from here. And we mentioned it earlier with TKR. I feel like a really big thing is that he had that jump. I mean, redshirted, didn't get going really until his junior year was his breakout year where he became an All-American type of player. If you could, just a quick thing, we haven't talked about this, but who would you say do you project could have that type of jump here? I'll say, you say one person, I can try to think of another person, if we don't say the same person.
I would say I'll go with Jakari Harris.
Okay.
I found myself, especially ever since he stayed, and I think maybe I'm a little biased because I feel like we had all kind of written him off as a transfer portal casualty just to get more playing time. But the fact that he stayed, when his role next year, and our guard depth is going to be very deep, and he really does not have as clear a path to minutes as really probably any other guard on the roster. The fact that he stayed and he wants to, still be, a part of this program and work to improve, I'm not betting against that. I'm not betting against that mentality. So I'm going all in on Jakari Harris, and I think he could even be a guy who steps into, whether he ends up starting or is as good as this guy. I think he could be a Fletcher type leader for this program. So I'm going to go Jakari Harris next year, junior year breakout.
I'll let you have that one because I'll take the boring pick, and I'm gonna go with my guy CJ Cox. I have to say I just feel like he is the perfect mold for a guy who is going to step up next year and knows that he kind of needs to be that guy. I mean, he was probably our fourth best player this year, if not fifth. I mean, he's the last two between him and Fletcher, and so he's a guy who knows he needs to step up. I mean, he knows he needs to be our best guard probably. He needs to be a leader, if anything, because Jacobson's a young dude. Our other center's young. Bencher, Pierce. I mean, I guess you could say Pierce maybe, but he's first year on the team. It's hard to be a leader like that. I think Jakari fits that mold too. I think that's why we say Jakari and CJ, because they both fit the mold of a Fletcher or a Lance Jones or some guy that you know is supporting that team all the time. So I think those are both really good choices for that. I think we'll talk about it more later too. I mean, we'll get into all in future episodes talking about projected lineups and stuff. But I'm sure Jakari is going to be an interesting one to talk about because of like you say, he's such a hard path to getting minutes. I mean, there's so many guys coming in. CJ's pretty much a lock to start, I think, no matter what. So he's a bit of an easier time. But I think moving on, I think we'll take a break here before we move on to our next segment for going through our memories. We're going to do a draft in the next segment here, but take a quick break.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that portion of everything probably came out to 7 minutes, but I thought that was better than the last. I thought it flowed better too. All right, so now in this last segment, we're going to be going through a kind of back and forth draft of our favorite moments from this season. So, Justin, I'll let you go ahead and get started.
I gotta say, I don't know if this is a slam dunk because I think it is for the first overall pick, but I gotta go with the TKR game winner versus Texas. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's a surprise to you, but that's one of those memories where it's one of the things you think about Purdue for the rest of life. We both live in Indy. We experienced it in Carmel. It was a great environment for it. As much as it could have turned awful in about 5 seconds if it went the other way, somehow there's a Texas fan there. It's a great overall pick for this year. I mean, any game winner is going to be up there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think for the last 10 minutes of game time for that game, I went completely nonverbal. It was just it started hitting you we're playing an 11 seed, is this how this is going to end in the Sweet 16 when, this team had loftier ambitions than that. You don't want this is how, those 3 seniors go out. So to have that game winner, it made it all worth it. Yeah, so for my number 2, I think I'm going to go with a surprise pick, and it's more of you were there, but maybe it's a more personal one. So it's going to be when we beat IU at Mackey by 29.
Okay.
Purdue's largest win in the series. Obviously, you're coming off of 2 straight losses to IU overall, but the earlier loss in the season, obviously their success in football and our lack of success in football. So just being able to watch that downtown, Coach's Tavern, probably one of maybe 2 Purdue tables in there. There weren't many. That was painted crimson, and just to be able to walk out of there with the win, that was a great time, and so I'm gonna go with that as my number 2.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and steal one from you. I feel like I'm getting this for 50 cents on the dollar. I'm gonna take the Big Ten championship game. I mean, the 41 game, Braden Smith's legacy on the line.
I love it.
That I think that's one of those that's you'll see in 20 years. You'll be at a gym, screens on, and you'll see Big Ten Classic come up, and it's going to be Michigan Purdue winning. And I think that's I to have that in the Texas one back to back for me. I feel like I'm doing great good in this draft. So I don't know what you got next. I feel like this could go any direction. I'm kind of curious.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe I should have thought this through because I do own a Braden Smith 41 jersey. And just jerseys and numbers and all that jazz. I love that stuff. So since you stole that right out from under me, I'm going to steal destroying Texas Tech. And probably at that point in the season, is that the most you believed that Purdue was going to win the national championship?
I thought we were going to go undefeated. I thought we were going to be the best team of all time at that point.
Oh, yeah.
You could not have talked me off of Purdue Mountain at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree. So funnily enough, I wasn't even watching the game. So I was at a Friendsgiving back home, and I was just like checking the score, but the group chat's going off. I'm looking inside. It's like, oh, and then we're up by a little bit, and then we're up by a whole lot of bit. I'm trying to get all the details. Like as I'm going, I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, fake fan of me there. I didn't even watch the game, but I'm taking that as my moment because that was incredible, and just like scrolling through Twitter after your team wins is always amazing. But that one was special.
I think it's a great pick. I mean, personally, would have loved to round it out my draft with that one, but this one's a little bit more of a. I feel like this is an interesting pick. It's more concept. I think like I don't know how you feel about this, but like the second I could see Purdue being the number one favorite on like a betting app or people talking about them as a preseason ranked number one, that might have helped this season in my rankings, even if it was a little disappointing at times, to be one of the best by far. Like it's just having everybody talk about Purdue in such a way where we're the number one team in the country. Everybody thinks we're gonna win the Natty. You see people being like, "Yeah, you gotta take Purdue. They're a great choice." I won't say this moment. I'll say it later if I can get back to it. If you don't steal it from me, but it's just that feeling of being one of the best teams is there. I feel like I gotta have that on my draft.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, like you look, the way I always compare it is, in basketball, and I mean, you would know this, but you look at like a team like Alabama, and it's like, oh, Alabama's like the number one team in the country, or Ohio State, or I'm not gonna say the team this year, but you look at that, and it's like it almost seems so unobtainable, and like you can't even understand that feeling. But then it's like Purdue has literally had that 4 of the last 5 years. I mean, it's something that we have, so you do know. It's just a different sport. But I think basketball just feels a little bit different just because there's so many games. But yeah, no, that's incredible. I guess this is probably my last one. I think what I'll go with is so the only game I went to in person this year was the Akron game. That was when we were number one. It was Omer Meyer, had a really good game that game. It was early on in the season, obviously non-con. Against an Akron team that ended up making the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they were pretty good.
Not a bad win.
No, not at all, as it turned out. But like you mentioned, to your point, being able to go in person and watch your team as the number one team in the country, it's awesome just seeing that number one right there. So I'll go with that one, a little more personal, but yeah, seeing that number one next to the team is awesome.
No, that's a great pick. I think it's a great draft to kind of round out this season, because I mean it's one of the seasons we'll look back on. We're gonna remember it because of everything that happened in it, and like I do think it's gonna be remembered as maybe the Braden Smith season, if anything, just because he broke the record, I think, in a long time. But there's so many parts of it that like I would love to experience a season like this. I mean, every other school will be lucky to have a season like this most of the time, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, throughout the entire year, even when it was, like, bad, I think you knew in the back of your mind it was a realistic chance that Purdue could win the national championship. They could put it together. They could, at the peak of their powers, they could beat any team in the country. And, they almost got there, but, just fell a little bit short. But yeah, I think that was a pretty successful draft. I think we both ended with moments we wanted to.
Yeah, I would say I like my team. I like my team against yours. I'll have to say it's probably better for right now. But I think that's be it for this episode, I guess. I think we can move on to wrapping it up.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. I guess in the next episode, what we're going to be looking at is handing out some awards for this past season. So a little bit more of a season recap kind of theme with that one as well. But we'll have some fun with it. But thank you guys for watching, and take care.